in the middle of a forest. Then a male voice is telling someone over the radio that there is a safe compound. The voice asks how many people are there and how many are children. The voice says the fastest way to the compound is through the river, and he doesn't think anyone can make the journey with children. Mallory Hayes is shown giving instructions to two young children, whom she calls boy and girl. She tells them to do everything she says, and if they take their blindfolds off, she'll hurt them. After running through instructions, the three of them leave their house blindfolded, carrying backpacks and 3 birds in a box. Mallory leads the children to the edge of the river, feels her way to a hidden boat, pushes it into the river, and the 3 of them begin their journey down the river. The next scene shows a heavily pregnant Mallory 5 years before. She's painting on a canvas when her sister Jessica walks in with the groceries. Jessica tells Mallory that the stores are packed because of the incident. Mallory, unaware of what her sister's talking about, turns on the TV. There's an outbreak in Europe and Russia, where something still unknown is causing many people to kill themselves. After surfing through the channels, Mallory tells her sister whatever's happening is still in Russia. Jessica takes Mallory to the hospital, where Mallory's doctor, Dr. Lapham, asks her routine questions about her well-being and the babies. After the appointment, Mallory goes to the bathroom to throw up and tells Jessica to go ahead. On her way to the car, Mallory sees a woman hitting her head repeatedly against the glass. This makes her and others panic. Mallory hurries at Jessica and tells her to leave. On the road, there's full-blown chaos. People are driving erratically, and panic is beginning to build. Jessica's phone rings in the back seat. When Mallory turns to get it for her, Jessica suddenly changes. Her eyes are red and watery. Her stance is rigid. She intentionally wants to crash her car. Not knowing what to do, Mallory struggles with the steering wheel with her sister while pleading with her to stop it. Finally, Jessica crashes the car into a stationary vehicle, and the car turns over. When Mallory gets out of the car, Jessica kills herself by walking in front of an oncoming vehicle. By this time, there's full-blown panic. Everyone is running, and some people are intentionally crashing their cars. Mallory runs in the same direction as the other people. She's pushed to the ground. In the distance, a woman named Lydia, trying to escape with her husband, Douglas, sees Mallory on the ground and tries to help her. Cinema recap here. We've got a little challenge that'll take 5 seconds, and it will change your life forever. You ready? All you gotta do is like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and you'll receive 10 free years of good luck. It's as simple as that. As she gets close, Lydia hears something. Then she enters into a burning car, sitting calmly until the car explodes. One of the passerbys on the road, Tom, helps Mallory up. He tells her to cover her eyes and helps her to the door of a house where Douglas is. The door is locked. Tom and Mallory are joined at the door by Lucy, a police officer. After banging on the door, the house owner, Greg, opens up for them against Douglas's wishes. When they enter, Douglas tells Mallory his wife is dead because she tried to save her. There are about 6 people in the kitchen, each one trying to call a loved one. Mallory tries to call her mom. It rings, but she isn't picking up. Felix says whatever's happening affects the central nervous system, and he had been seeing it in his patients for a week now. Others try to explain what they think is happening and its effects on people. Tom instructs them to close the windows. On TV, they're informed that the president has declared a state of emergency and closed all borders before the TV signal is lost. Charlie, a grocery store worker, says it's the beginning of the end of the world. Tom goes to Mallory, who's sitting, asks if she needs something. Mallory refuses Tom's help until she breaks down and tells him about how Jessica and Lydia died. The scene comes back to the present. Mallory and the children have been on the river for 6 hours. The children are sleeping, and the whole boat is covered with a blanket to take their blindfolds off. Mallory tries the walkie-talkie to see if there's someone. After a while, there's some sort of interference, and the birds in the box start to make a lot of noise. From under the blanket, Mallory looks around, but she can't see anything. Back to the past. The guys have been in the house for 3 days. There's a knock on their door. Tom goes to the door to open it when Mallory grabs a shotgun and points it at the door. Tom instructs everyone to close their eyes. He passes a blanket to the person outside to cover the door before letting her in. The person outside turns out to be Olympia. She's also pregnant. Due to dwindling food, Greg suggests that they look through external camera footage and see if it's possible to go to other houses and get some supplies. The others are dubious about the suggestion, but Greg convinces them and volunteers to watch the footage. Greg, who's tied to a chair, sees some rustling leaves, and suddenly his posture changes, and his eyes go red and watery. Those downstairs hear a bang and rush towards the room Greg is. By the time they get there, he's killed himself. Back to the river. Mallory and the children have been on the boat for 14 hours. when they hear a voice call out. The person who offers to help them tells them it's okay to take off their blindfolds. Mallory orders the children not to take off their blindfolds. Then she hides them under the blanket. The man tries to force Mallory to take off her blindfold. They struggle until Mallory finds a machete and cuts the man. In the house, Tom gathers everyone and tells them they have run out of food and there's no help in sight. Charlie suggests they go to the grocery store to get supplies. Tom, Douglas, Mallory, and Lucy volunteer to go. The others convince Charlie to join since he knows the layout. Douglas suggests that they stay at the grocery store and abandon those at Greg's house at the grocery store. The others disagree. They're still arguing when they hear knocks on a locked door within the store. It turns out it's Fish Fingers, one of Charlie's workers at the store. He pleads with them. Tom is at the door about to open it. Lucy joins while Douglas points his shotgun at the door. Immediately, Tom opens the door. Some birds Mallory picks up in the store start making noise and flying around. They realize Fish Fingers is already infected and is trying to force himself into the store. Charlie sacrifices himself to save the others. They hurriedly lock the door and see Charlie's blood flow under the door. Fish Fingers keeps begging them to let him in. That night, Mallory and Douglas are discussing in the kitchen when they hear a noise in the garage. Lucy and Felix have stolen their only car and fled the safe house. Back on the river, Mallory has been rowing for a whole day. Girl asks her how much longer they have to the end of the journey. Mallory tells her not much longer. Suddenly, their boat hits a submerged truck and almost capsizes. Boy falls into the river. They lose their supplies. She struggles to save them. They come to the riverbank and Mallory leaves the children to see if she can go get supplies. Using a thin rope as a guide, she locates a hospital and gets some food and blankets. Mallory's still gathering supplies. She hears something. Putting her blindfold back on, Mallory leaves the hospital and tries to find her way back to the boat. On the boat, the birds are acting out. The girl decides to go and find Mallory because she thinks something is wrong with her. Using a rope as a tether, the girl gets out of the boat and walks towards Mallory. As Mallory tries to find her way, she hears someone whispering her name. The girl also feels something that makes her stop. As she pauses, a wind blows around her that makes her hair stand on end. Before anything can happen to her, her rope is tugged. Mallory pulls her back, then carries her while berating her for leaving the boat. 28 hours on the river, Mallory tries the walkie-talkie again to see if there's someone on the other side. There's still no response. The scene goes back to the house. Mallory is testing the walkie-talkie they took from the grocery store when Olympia lets in Gary. Initially, everyone is furious with Olympia for letting them in. When Gary tells them his story, everyone except Douglas allows him to stay. Douglas points the gun at Gary, telling him to leave, and telling anyone who doesn't agree with him to leave with Gary. This goes on until Cheryl, one of the house's original occupants, breaks a vase on Douglas's head, making him pass out. Mallory and Olympia are in the room. Olympia is apologizing to Mallory for letting Gary in. She makes Mallory promise to take care of her baby if something happens to her. After some initial reluctance, Mallory agrees. Mallory gives Olympia a small doll as a baby shower present, telling her to give it to her baby when she's old enough. Olympia agrees. The scene cuts back to the river. They've spent 38 hours on the river. The small doll Mallory gave Olympia is in Girl's hands. As they get closer to the rapids, Mallory covers them with a blanket and tells the children that when they get to the rapids, one of them has to look without a blindfold so she can know what direction to paddle the boat. The boy volunteers, but Mallory refuses. She tells them she will choose who will do it when the time comes. Back at the house, Mallory and Olympia go into labor at the same time. Cheryl takes them upstairs to help with the delivery, assisted by Tom. Gary is downstairs. He puts on classical music and brings out some grotesque drawings from his bag. As he stares at them, his stance changes. Gary picks up the cage with the bird, puts them in the fridge, and proceeds to open all the covered windows. When Douglas, locked up in the garage doors, confronts him, Gary opens the garage door. Douglas tries to warn Tom about Gary. Before Tom can get the gun, Gary hits Tom in the head. Gary then proceeds upstairs where Mallory and Olympia have given birth to a boy and a girl, respectively. After looking at the babies, Gary proceeds to open the windows. He urges the three women to look. Olympia doesn't look away in time. She's turned when the light hits her face. As Olympia stares at the window, Mallory begs her for the baby. Olympia gives Mallory her daughter, then rushes headlong through the window, falling to her death. Gary forces Cheryl to open her eyes. When she does, Cheryl stabs herself in the neck with the scissors in her hand. Douglas comes upstairs and shoots Gary in the shoulder before Gary can force Mallory and the babies to look. In retaliation, Gary pushes Douglas, whose eyes are closed, through the railing downstairs and stabs him with the scissors. Tom kills Gary after coming to. 5 years later, Mallory and the children are outside. She's teaching them how to recognize their surroundings with their blindfolds on. Tom's in the house trying to see if he can contact anyone on the walkie-talkie. As usual, no one responds. In the next scene, Mallory goes through the houses looking for anything she can take when she hears some of the infected driving around looking for the uninfected. When she gets home, Mallory tells Tom, and they decide that no one goes on a supply run unaccompanied. Mallory agrees, and they make love. That night, while they're asleep, the walkie-talkies come to life. The voice heard at the beginning of the movie is asking if there's anyone there. Tom responds, and the voice tells him his name is Rick. There is a safe compound 2 days' journey down the river. Rick asks if they have children. Tom says they don't. Rick describes the path to take and tells them that to get to the rapids, they have to take off their blindfold and look. The next day, while getting water, Tom and Mallory argue on whether they should go to Rick or not. Tom thinks they should, while Mallory doesn't. He says he thinks Rick is legit because he told them there are many birds in the compound. Birds act as a warning system when the infected ones are near. Mallory doesn't buy that because Gary was able to fool their birds before trying to infect everybody. The argument ends without either of them conceding. The four go on a supply run when they run into the same people Mallory heard earlier. Tom tells Mallory to take the children and go. Tom also tells Mallory if he doesn't come home in 15 minutes, she should take the children to the boat and go to Rick's compound. Mallory goes out through the back, while Tom goes out blindfolded to meet the people. The people tell Tom to take the blindfold off. He's still talking to them when one of them sees Mallory and the children. Tom shoots and hits some of them before he's shot. He decides to take off his blindfold and he kills the rest, not before he's infected, and shoots himself. At the house, Mallory waits for 15 minutes. When Tom doesn't arrive, she starts to cry, knowing he's probably dead. Then she starts to prepare, which takes us back to the earlier scene where she gives boy and girl instructions. Before they leave, girl asks about Tom, and Mallory tells him he's not coming. As they get closer to the rapids, Mallory covers them with the blanket and tells them that it's time to choose. Once again, boy offers to look, but Mallory shuts him down again. The girl also offers to look, but Mallory can't make a decision. She remembers Olympia in her last moments with Tom. Then Mallory decides none of them will look. They brave the rapids as best as they can until the boat capsizes. Mallory finds boy and girl, and they search for the compound. She hears Jessica and Tom urging her to look. While trying to fight the feeling, Mallory trips and hits her head. Boy and girl go separate ways looking for Mallory. Both of them hear Mallory telling them to take off their blindfolds. When Mallory comes to, she hurriedly seeks the children, telling them not to take off their blindfolds and pleading with them to listen to her voice. When she finds them, she apologizes for treating them badly. They run towards the sound of the birds, but Tom's voice gets louder, telling Mallory to take off her blindfold. Finally, the three of them get to the door of the compound. Mallory knocks on the door, pleading with those people inside to open the door. When the noise gets closer and no one responds, Mallory begs them to just let her children in. Someone opens the door and checks the eyes of Mallory and the children to see if they are infected. When they confirm they're okay, they call for Rick. Rick assures them of their safety and leads them to an opening where there are other people. Mallory realizes the compound was formerly a school for the blind. Most people there are blind. Together, Mallory and the children release the birds to join the other birds in the compound. Then they see Dr. Lapham, who asks for the names of the children. When the children say their names are girl and boy, Mallory corrects them. Their names are Olympia and Tom, and she's their mother. Dr. Lapham tells the children to go and play with the others while she hugs Mallory. Mallory watches her children while they play, then takes in her new environment.